Hi, I'm Sarah Scott, and today I'll be discussing aging caregivers and aging adults within complex care systems. As life expectancy increases for individuals with developmental and intellectual disabilities, and with the shift away from institutional care, more adults are now living at home with their parents well into adulthood. This has created a unique and understudied parent child relationship in which both the parent and the adult child are aging at the same time and may be experiencing declining physical and mental capacities. As both groups are living longer, this dynamic is becoming more common, making it increasingly more important to understand how caregiving responsibilities can intersect with aging, gender, and institutional support. This research therefore asks the question: how does caregiving within complex institutional systems affects parents, with the focus on mothers' mental health as they age alongside their dependent adult child? Building on assignment 1, I refined my question to focus more specifically on caregivers' perceived mental health and the gender dimension of caregiving, which remains understudied in current literature. This shift in focus reflects key themes that we discuss in this course, especially the way caregiving is socially constructed and unevenly distributed. As discussed in our February 3rd class, caregiving is often implicitly framed as women's work, with motherhood positioned as the default for emotional and physical labor due to an alignment of caregiving as natural femininity. By addressing mothers' experiences within aging caregiving, this project addresses a specific gap in how aging, caregiving, and gender can intersect. Existing literature from around the world examines the self-reported well-being and quality of life of parents caring for adult children with developmental and intellectual disabilities. One of the most significant and consistent stressors across the literature is concern about the future care of their child when the parent is no longer able to provide support. Kim and Chung described this as the when I am gone syndrome, which describes the overwhelming specific anxiety parents experience regarding their child's well-being after their death. Similarly, Dillenberger and McCurr found that most caregivers within their study had not made long-term plans for the future care of their child, nor had they discussed these plans with their adult children. In these studies, this anxiety is deeply tied to mental health, contributing to chronic stress, uncertainty, and emotional strain. This emphasis on future planning resonates with our course themes from our lecture on January 30th around temporality and responsibility, specifically Inuit foundational social laws that stress the importance of continually planning and preparing for the future within systems of care. At the same time, caregivers frequently describe their own health as good or fair, even while managing multiple health challenges. Young and Korostas describe this process as social comparison, where participants evaluate their own quality of life relative to others they perceive as worse off. This can be understood through our conversations of epistemic frameworks on January 20th, where standardized measures of well-being might fail to capture the lived experiences of aging caregivers due to their unique challenges. This suggests that caregivers may downplay their own difficulties, complicating how their well-being is measured and understood, reproducing Eve Tuck's damage-centered approach, which focuses on individual deficits instead of systemic conditions or a lack of access to institutional resources and support. Another important theme across the literature is the professional proactivity gap, in which future care planning remains an unmet need within psychiatric and social service systems. According to Siva Kumar et al., professionals often delay initiating conversations about long-term planning until a crisis actually occurs, rather than being proactive and addressing concerns earlier. This showcases a broader structural issue where responsibility for planning is placed on families without institutional support. Programs such as Partners for Planning aim to address this gap by providing resources for long-term and financial planning. They offer free tools such as webinars, planning guides, and application support for services related to housing, income, and future care. These resources include webcasts about the disability tax credit, creative options for home, and sustaining for your future. They also have application support for beyond graduation, social services at home, and early planning toolkits. This Toronto-based program can help reduce uncertainty and stress on aging caregivers, and the resources focus on all stages and ages of caregiving. In addition to these structural challenges, a clear gendered pattern of caregiving emerges, though it's rarely explicitly discussed within the literature. In multiple studies, the vast majority of caregivers are mothers. For example, Minez and Woodford found that among 80 participants who are primary caregivers of adults with developmental disabilities in Ontario, 71 are mothers and 9 are fathers. Similar trends appear across other studies, with Dillenberger and McCurr reporting that 22 out of 29 caregivers were mothers, with one sister additionally on top of that, and Young and Korostas interviewing 10 women and only 2 men. Despite this consistent imbalance in participants, most studies don't acknowledge or critically examine why caregiving is so heavily feminized. This pattern reflects broader assumptions rooted in theories such as Bowlby's theory of ethological evolutionary attachment theory, which emphasizes the centrality of mother-child attachment and suggests that maternal responsiveness is key to healthy child development. While influential across parenting literature, as discussed in our lecture on February 3rd, these theories can reinforce outdated notions of mothers as primary caregivers, positioning fathers as secondary or peripheral. This is important to consider when looking at these studies. While mothers are making up a majority of these participants, there's no acknowledgement of this imbalance. Differences in mental health may contribute to this conversation, as well as expectations and norms surrounding mothering and caregiving. Unfortunately, Partners for Planning also did not acknowledge this imbalance and has no specific supports or webcasts about caregiving norms in motherhood. Overall, caregiving for an adult child with disabilities challenges dominant narratives of independence and aging. Rather than transitioning out of caregiving roles, many parents, especially mothers, continue providing intensive support well into later life when they may be experiencing their own declining mental health. This impact is not just shaped by individual circumstances, but by broader structural issues such as limited institutional support and deeply rooted gender expectations. Understanding these intersecting influences is important to develop equitable and supportive systems of care for aging caregivers in the future. Thank you.